Hi, welcome to Caribou Country Lifestyle. My name is Cheryl, and today I am down in my basement and I have plotted out all of my raised bed gardens for the 2024 growing season. And I just kind of wanted to show you how I have sorted everything out and some of the different vegetables and herbs that I will be growing. So I have 9 raised 4x8 beds, and then I have a U-shaped bed as well. And I have plotted everything out, and I'm just gonna go over how I've put everything, laid it all out on paper, and I'm gonna show you what I've done, and then I'll just kind of go over some of the reasons why I'm putting certain vegetables with other vegetables or herbs or flowers, and we'll just kind of go over everything. So I'm gonna bring you down to my paper and show you what I've done. Okay, so hopefully you can see all of this. I'm gonna start with these long beds here. So this is my number 1 bed, and this is my number 2 bed. These are the beds that we installed last spring. So in my number 1 bed, I'm going to be planting in this portion of, this is a 33-foot long bed, and it's 3 feet wide. In this first section, I'm going to be planting my mashed potato squash. Then I'll be planting my cabbage and my cauliflower. So this gives 10 feet to my mashed potato squash, and I can get 2 or 3 mashed potato squash plants in that area. And then the other 23 feet, I will be planting my cabbage and my cauliflower, probably more cabbage than cauliflower. And I have 2 varieties of cauliflowers. I have a cheddar cauliflower, and then I have an early white head cauliflower as well. And I'm going to be doing one variety over here, and then my other variety will be going in one of my raised beds in my raised bed garden area. In my number 2 bed, it is 33 feet long as well. I am going to be putting in 3 varieties of potatoes, and I've sectioned them off into 11 feet per variety, and I figured I would give them each about a foot in between the plants, so I would be able to fit in 10 plants of each variety, and that'll give me quite a bit for the potatoes. My number 3 bed is the one that we are going to be installing, and it's only going to be about 30 feet long, but it's still going to be 3 feet wide. And I have chosen to put in butternut squash this end, then my Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and pumpkin. This way I can have these ones kind of sprawling out with my squashes, and then have the pumpkin at this end, and I can maneuver the vines as they're growing. And then I'm also going to be intermingling some of my corn that I'm going to be putting in, because you can plant corn with squash, and I'm going to just intermingle corn in throughout my squash plant. So I'll have so many corn at this end, and then I'll have so many corn over here at this end. I was gonna put corn here, but I'm thinking I might not, because I might end up having to put my hoops from here to here with the bug netting over it, just so I can protect those plants from the cabbage moth so that they aren't laying eggs on my plants. And then the same thing for over here. I'll be able to hoop this whole bed here and do the same thing and put the netting on that. Moving on to my raised bed garden area. This first one here, now I have one of my cattle panels. Like, we took a 16-foot cattle panel and cut it in half, and I have 2 T-posts on each side, and I put this cattle panel and affix it to the T-posts, and I use just those zap straps. So on this cattle panel, I'm going to have 4 tomato plants. I'm going to have 2 of each variety. In front of my tomato plants, I'm going to have bush beans. And down the side over here, what do I have wrote there? I can't even read it upside down. Oh, I picked up some purple annual bunching onions. So I'm going to be growing that down along this side. I also have planted my garlic on this back side of this panel, and that's already in there. I planted that last October. And then I have an F with a circle around it. These are where I'm going to be putting in some of my flowers. Then we'll move on to this bed here. Again, I have another cattle panel. This will fit 4 tomato plants. I'm doing 2 of each variety. This way I can stake and tie my tomato plants up to the panel, and it works out really well. In front of these tomato plants, I'm going to have 2 varieties of peppers. I will have 4 pepper plants going in front of the tomatoes. Along this side is going to be my green annual bunching onions. I have garlic already planted on this side, and again, it'll be some kind of a flower in this raised bed. Now I will move over into my U-shaped bed. Along here, I already have asparagus established into this bed. But on the back side of the bed, I'm going to have sunflowers. And in the front of the bed, I'm going to have an assortment of annual flowers growing there. Here, I'm going to plant some cilantro seeds. At this end, I'm going to plant some dill seeds, and I plant the fern leaf dill. And with the asparagus, you can plant herbs in with your asparagus and it won't affect the asparagus. On this side, I will have my other variety of cauliflower. I'm not sure if I'm doing the cheddar cauliflower here or the cheddar cauliflower here, or I'm going to do the white variety or the white variety over there. And then in each one of these corners, I'm going to be planting flowers. And then more flowers over here. On this side, I have a cattle panel tied up onto the T-posts, and I'm going to be doing, it's a crunch snap pea, and they're a shorter variety, and I'm going to plant them along this panel here. And then in front of the snap peas, because they'll be growing up the panel, I'm going to put my Swiss chard, and then in front of the Swiss chard, I'm going to be planting my onion seeds. Actually, it'll be my onion plants that I'm starting from seed in the house, and those are my big bulb onions. I have Elsa Craig, Walla Walla, I have a red variety, and I picked up another variety, and I can't remember which one it is. So I'm going to have a few varieties kind of all over in different areas of the raised beds. Okay, so now we're moving on to this bed. This is the bed where I have a 16-foot cattle panel, and it is attached to 2 T-posts on this side, and the other end is attached to 2 T-posts on that side. So it arbors over these 2 beds. I'm going to have cucumbers crawling up this side, and on this side going over, I'm going to have spaghetti squash. And I have grown spaghetti squash on these arbor panels, and it has worked out well. Underneath this side, this is the side that would get the most sun. I'm going to have my eggplants planted under these cucumbers. In front of the cucumbers, I'm going to be planting my hikuri salad turnips. Beside, along here, are going to be my leek plants and more leek plants at this end, and then I'm going to have some type of a flower. And when I put in these flowers, they are ones that attract the beneficial bugs in my garden. So it could be calendula, it could be alyssum, marigolds, it could be a zinnia, which is not really brings in beneficial bugs, but it is nice to look at. Over on this side, in behind my spaghetti squash, I'm going to be planting 2 rows of carrots underneath here. Along the side here, I will be planting one of my zucchinis. I do a green zucchini and I do a yellow zucchini. So I'll have one variety of zucchini here and the other variety of zucchini on this side. These are 4 feet wide, these panels. So I still have 2 feet on each end to be able to plant something in there. In front of my spaghetti squash, I'm going to have another 2 rows of carrots. When I go over onto this bed, it's going to just have a panel that's 8 feet long, just like how I had set up over here. And I'm going to have tomatoes on this side. The reason why I have the tomatoes on this side is because this is the south facing of my garden. So this side gets the most sun. On this side of the tomatoes, I'm going to have a couple of rows of beets. On this side of the tomatoes, I'm going to have another 2 rows of carrots. Down this side, I'm going to have kale. I have 2 different kinds of kale. I have a dwarf curled kale, and I also have the Toscano dinosaur kale. On this next bed, I have another one of the 16-foot panels that arbors over. And on this side, I'm going to have another variety of cucumbers. I do pickling cucumbers and then I do regular cucumbers. So that's why I want cucumbers there and cucumbers here. In front of the cucumbers, I'm going to have beets. Underneath this panel on the underside of the cucumbers, I'm going to have celery. My celery did really well. Last year I had my celery growing over here and it did amazing. So I'm going to put it over on this side this time. More onion, the larger onions. I'm going to have my onion plants planted on this side, and I'll probably have 2 rows and then another 2 rows of onion plants. This is 4 feet wide, so it's a 4-foot section of onion plants, and if I can get 2 rows in there, that'll be awesome. On this other side of the panel, I am growing my other variety of peas. These are a taller snap pea. I like snap peas. I like them better than shelling peas. I don't like shelling peas. To me, it's too much work. Then on this side, I'm going to have a couple of varieties of radishes. I probably have about 4 or 6 varieties of radishes. So I'm going to have 2 varieties on this side and 2 varieties on that side, because again, I have 2 feet on each side. In front of the peas on this, I'm doing 2 more rows of beets. Coming down on this side, I have another panel here for more tomatoes. In front of these tomatoes, I'm going to have 2 more varieties of peppers with 4 pepper plants. Under in the back where it would shade this side of the bed, I'm planting rutabagas. Along the sides, I'm going to be planting lettuce on this side. I'll probably have 2 rows of lettuce and 2 rows of lettuce over here. On this panel, I will have another 2 varieties of tomatoes with 4 plants going across the front facing the sun. another variety of bush beans. I have two varieties of bush beans. I have the dragon tongue bush beans, and then I have a tender green bush bean. I think that's the one I have. So I'll do one bush bean here and then the other bush bean on that side. In behind, I'll have a couple of varieties of spinach growing in here. In this center bed is all perennials, different types of perennial plants. I planted, I have some foxglove in there. I have some, my chamomile will probably reseed itself in there. The holy basil will reseed itself in here. I have columbine plants that'll come back, and I also have some carnations that I planted, and those will come back again. Those are some of the perennials that I planted. And as well, I will be planting a bunch of herbs in here again. Then on all of these little cement blocks that are surrounding the hole outside, they have little planting holes in them, and I filled them all with dirt, and I will have trailing flower varieties. And I like to alternate what I put in there, and then I'll talk about some of the varieties that I will be putting in there. So that's pretty much my layout of my garden. Now, when I'm doing my tomatoes out in those raised beds, those tomatoes that I plant in those raised beds are all indeterminate tomatoes. So the indeterminate tomatoes are tomato plants that grow an indeterminate height. They will continue to grow up, and you have no idea how tall they're going to get. And that way I stake them to those cattle panels. And I've been doing this for quite a few years. Last year, I had the best tomatoes out in my garden. I could not believe how many tomatoes I had. I have 20 variety of tomatoes that I will be growing this year, and I plant two tomatoes for each variety, like 2 tomato plants for each variety. This is my first year that I have half are indeterminate and half are determinate. Now the determinate ones grow a determined height, and they will produce basically all of their tomatoes at the same time. And those tomatoes I plan on planting in pots out on my deck. Last year, my tomatoes the last couple of years, my tomatoes have not done good on my deck. Last year, I thought, I'll plant them alongside of the house so that they get a little more shade, because it's pretty full sun out on my deck. Well, they still didn't do very good. And I was thinking, what the heck? I don't understand. But when I think about it, my tomatoes did so amazing out of my raised beds. And the reason for that is I put a layer of compost. So I am amending all of those beds with a layer of compost. And then when I plant it, it's all mixed in. Well, I didn't put any compost in any of my pots out on the deck. I didn't mix compost in with my garden soil that I get. And I was like, what the heck was I thinking? So this year, I'm going to be adding compost to my garden soil when I plant my tomatoes out on the deck. So I've got, I was just going through my tomato plants, and I have, like I say, I have 20 varieties of tomato plants, and I'll just go through what my indeterminate varieties are, and those are the ones that I will have to stake because they get to an indeterminate height. And some of those are Cherry Roma. This was a new variety that I did last year, and I had them on the deck. So what I did was I had them in a pot. I put a tomato cage on it, and then I also put in some old broom handles, and I shoved those in the dirt with the cage, and they did okay. I got some tomatoes off it, but it wasn't as good as I'm thinking this next year. It's got to be better. Another indeterminate was Aunt Ruby's German Green. These tomatoes were absolutely amazing. I had nice big tomatoes. They were such a beautiful yellow with little streaks of red growing through them. Like, they were so good, and they were very, very prolific, and I could not believe how many tomatoes I had off of them. I'm doing the Black Krim. I did those last year. They did really well. These are the Rainbow Blend, which is another variety of the, what is it? The Brandywine. I have a hard time remembering Brandywine. I don't know why. I am doing the Amish Paste tomato, yellow pear, cherry tomato, natural black cherry tomato, chocolate sprinkles cherry tomato, old German really nice bigger slicer tomato, just beautiful with the yellow and the red in it, so nice. New Girl. New Girl's okay. It didn't actually grow that many tomatoes on it last year, and I may not order those tomato seeds again, but I'll use up the seeds. I'm not going to waste it. Now, as far as my bush varieties, and that's the determinate ones, these are the ones I'm going to be planting on my deck, and I'm going to have to find a lot of pots to be planting these on my deck, that's for sure. But I have the Manitoba, the Torenzo, which is a cherry tomato, and that one can be grown in baskets. And so I've done that as well. Same with the Tumbling Tom Yellow tomato. That's another one that grows in baskets. The San Marzano, Celebrity, Lemon Boy, Indigo Rose, and these are a very black tomato, but when they're ripe, they have a little bit of red on the very bottom. So when you turn them over to look at the bottom and you see that red, then you know it's ripe. If it's green on the bottom, it's not ripe. And then this is a new one that I'm trying that my sister said that her husband absolutely loves them. They're his new favorite, and that's the Sun Gold cherry tomato. So I have a few cherry tomatoes. I have to decide in my indeterminate ones what cherry tomatoes I'm going to grow and which ones I'm not going to grow, because I can only put 10 varieties out in those raised beds. I have enough room for 20 tomato plants in those raised beds, but I have more than 10 varieties of indeterminate plants. So I have to decide which ones I'm going to be doing. For my peppers, I have 8 varieties of pepper plants. And I think what I'm going to do is I have a couple of long pots, and I might grow some of my peppers on the deck, probably my jalapeno peppers. I want to do quite a few of those. So I have 2 long pots, and I was thinking I would do my jalapeno peppers in those 2 long pots. I should be able to get 3 pepper plants in each of those longer pots, and I can have them on the deck, and they will do amazing. They will love that, lots of heat. For my peppers, for my trailing variety flowers that I'm planning on putting in and around that circular garden, I have ordered trailing variety flowers, and some of the ones that I ordered was a red lobelia, and it cascades over. Then I got some Nurembergia, Rembergia. I'm not exactly sure. That's another trailing variety as well. I got some Peruvian bluebell, and that's a trailing variety. I already have a lot of alyssum that I plant in there, and I have a white alyssum, I have a pink alyssum, and I think I have a purple alyssum too that I'm going to be putting all in around my raised beds, and I will be putting some in on that circular garden as well. Okay, so I was kind of looking through my book trying to figure out what I'm going to be starting, and we're going to Vancouver because we're going to be moving my youngest son back to this area. So he is actually going to be moving in with a couple of his friends into one of our rentals. So we have just been cleaning this rental like crazy in the last month to get everything ready for my son and his two roommates, and they will be moving in for March the 1st. So we are going to be, pardon me, going to Vancouver with our truck, and also my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are bringing their truck too, and we will be going down to Vancouver and each bringing back a load of my son's stuff. And then once it's the end of February, then he will be just bringing his last little bit of personal belongings in his car, and then he'll be back here living in the same town as us. So that's super exciting to have him back. I'll have all three of my boys back living near me again, so that's awesome. And I'm also going to have to start some of my seeds in that time as well, because I'll be coming to the 12-week mark. I have that marked on my calendar for February the 27th, and I'm going to be starting all of my herbs. So those herbs, I'm only going to do a couple of the holy basil, only because I know how good it reseeds itself, and I had quite a bit of it in that circular bed that I have in the raised bed garden. So there's a good chance that I could be having quite a bit of the Tulsi growing in there. So I'm just going to do a couple of plants, and I'll have some of them on the deck because I just absolutely love the holy basil, how wonderful it smells. I got a new type of basil, and it's called the Kitchen Blend basil. And there are 3 types of basil in this one pack. There's 3 types of basil in it. So there's the Genovese basil, red Reuben, and the cinnamon basil. So of course you don't know which one, what seed is going to be for which. So I'm going to be growing probably about 6 or 8 seeds, and then we'll see what we get out of that. And a lot of my basils I'm going to be growing in amongst my tomato plants, especially the indeterminate ones, because I usually prune my indeterminate ones pretty heavily once they start getting established. I usually prune the bottom foot so that is the plant itself towards the bottom is bare, and that is just so I can bring in better airflow around my tomatoes. So I have a sweet basil as well, a lemon basil. Then I have ordered lime basil also, and I think that was it for the basils. Then I'm doing lavender, 2 types of parsley. I have a flat leaf parsley and the curled parsley. I like both of them. Rosemary, thyme, the borage, and I love the borage. And I think it reseeds itself too, so I'm just going to do a few of the borage. It brings in a lot of the honeybees, brings in a lot of bees, which helps to pollinate my cucumbers, with the flowers, and the same with for the tomatoes too. So I like to have those pollinator bees coming in. I'm going to try some tarragon this year. I've never grown tarragon before. I'm doing the lemon balm and some oregano, and I'm going to do a couple of plants as well of the chamomile, because there's a pretty good chance that it has reseeded itself, and I just don't want to have the whole bed being just chamomile or the holy basil, the tulsi. So I'm so excited. We're finally going to be starting some plants and getting things going. It's just amazing. So I did put my order in with Lindenberg. I haven't received that yet. And once I receive that, then I'll be showing you what I got when my seed order comes in with Lindenberg as well. So I just wanted to show you what I had set up for my planting season for 2024. And like I didn't have anything set up for as far as what my deck is going to look like, but I will be having lots of flowers, lots of herbs on the deck, lots of tomatoes and peppers that I'll be growing on the deck. I just can't fit everything in those raised beds out in the garden, so I have to bring some of that stuff out on the deck, and that's okay. I don't mind. I'll open it up with open arms and embrace the gardening season. So thanks for joining me, and we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.